Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast, The Equestrian's Inner Life. I'm Penella, your host, and today I'm very excited to welcome today's guest, Steffen Peters. Steffen is a 6-time Olympian and a multiple Olympic medalist, a distinction achieved only by a very few equestrians in the history of Olympic dressage. He is one of the most respected riders in the equestrian world. Born in Germany, Steffen made the courageous move to build his life and career in the United States, and in doing so became a cornerstone of American dressage. Known for his extraordinary feel, his quiet artistry in the saddle, and his deep dedication to the horse, he's inspired generations of equestrians around the globe. Beyond the medals and championships, his true gift has always been his ability to connect, to bring out the very best in his horses, and to show us what real partnership looks like. Steffen, I'm very happy to have you here today with us.
Thank you. That was a very kind introduction.
Oh, did you like that?
A lot to live up to. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, to start the conversation off, you've obviously had this remarkable career in the sport, but I'd love to start with something deeper. When you think of what it means to be an equestrian, beyond your medals and all the competition, what does it mean to you to live a life with horses?
You know, it wasn't just horses, Pernilla. Even when I was a kid, my parents had a really hard time keeping me away from animals. I remember my mom telling me I was 2-3 years old and I was walking across the street. And anytime I saw a very shy animal, I always had the urge to move up to this animal and make him comfortable and make him trust me. And we lived at that time in the middle of the city. So, you know, we had dogs and cats, and we even had a few ducks in the middle of the city. And my love for animals was always there, especially horses and dogs, I have to say.
When you made the big move, when you came over to America just to have your new life, how old were you when you made the big move?
I was 19 years old. I finished high school at 18, and then I came here briefly to on an invitation after high school from my friend Lori Falvo, who was also working at the same place where I was working in Germany. And she invited me to come over for a short time, but I still had to go back to Germany and do my army services.
Okay.
And that's what I did for 15 months. And I saved up my vacation during the service because I knew the second I would be released from the service, I would want to go to the United States.
Yes. So what was the connection? What drew you over there?
Well, you know, first of all, the weather. I lived 19 years in Germany, and then the last 15 months of the service in northern Germany, you know, doing a lot of security at night at 2 a.m. with the rain and the snow pouring on you. You know, I said, you know, there's got to be a better climate. And San Diego is just one of those.
Yes.
You know, it is not just for humans, but also for horses, just an incredible climate. And so I came over here. It was 1985. And I worked a little bit for my friend Lori. Here and there, I made $15 an hour for a lesson. And then I worked for a breeding farm, and I made $300 a week. And I thought I was the king of the world. And at that time, I rented a $200 garage that actually had a bathroom, but the shower was inside the house. And, you know, and I look back and I said, you know what, it worked. It was a very simple life. I worked my butt off early on, but it worked. It was very interesting.
Yes. So when you were in Germany, you obviously had the interest in dressage riding. So when you went over to America, you continued that on?
Yes, and I was very, very fortunate that throughout our entire childhood, my parents were extremely supportive with our horses, especially ponies. They had a very demanding business, but they still made time and went with us to shows on the weekends. So that was until I was 16. And then when I was 17, my dad bought a young 3-year-old horse named Udong, Udon. And my parents obviously supported me. And this horse came with me to the United States.
Oh,
And I think that was a huge stepping stone, to get my name out in the competitions. At that time, he was doing a 3rd level.
yes.
And again, he was 3 years old. And my sister and I, we broke him together in Germany. When she got hurt, I got on. I got hurt, she got on. And long story short, this horse named Udong, Udon, actually made the Olympic team in Atlanta in 1996, and he won a bronze medal for the United States.
Wow.
So it was our very first horse that my sister and I started,
Yes.
and this horse made it that far. And the neat thing is my father and my mom, they were still in really good health in
Yes.
96, and they got to see their horse that dad picked for 5,000 marks, which is about $2,500.
Yes.
They saw their horse make it to the Olympic Games,
Wow.
and he was retired after that.
Wow. When you went to that first Olympic Games, then how old were you then? Then you can't have been that old.
I was born in 64.
Yes.
The games were in 96. So I remember we had the national championships in New Jersey, and everything happened rather quickly. I mean, I want to be extremely realistic here because, yeah, in Germany, you have a dream of making it to the Olympics, but you're one amongst thousands of really, really good riders.
Yes.
And even that dream in the United States seemed somewhat unreachable. And then when Udong placed second at the Olympic trials in 96, all of a sudden I had one more test left. It was the freestyle. And I knew if the freestyle went well, there was a chance that I would make the Olympic team. And all of that happened so quickly. And I was so excited about the national championships. And then all of a sudden I said, and I got to watch my language here. I said, "Oh, I'm on the Olympic team." It happened so quickly. I had to process all that.
Yes.
And again, we were dealing with an 18-year-old horse that needed to be very, very carefully trained and very efficiently trained. But, he did 2 fantastic tests at the Atlanta Olympics. And again, to see the pride, from my parents and the co-owners at that time was just an incredible memory. But I have to say, I was extremely nervous, like even eating the last week or the 2 weeks before was very challenging.
Yes.
And, I just found myself very quickly said, "Oh my gosh, now, yeah, we did well at the championships, but now you're representing your country. You're presenting your parents, the people that supported you."
Yes.
And of course, this huge obligation I felt to my team. It was a lot. Everything happened very quickly. And I have to say, all the other medals afterwards, they sunk in pretty quickly. This one took a little while. It just, like I said, it happened so quickly.
Yes.
And I think that was a gigantic stepping stone towards the international competition.
So when you look back now and you can look at all the different Olympics you've been on, so the first one, as you've just told us about, how did then every other one come about? Like what, can you tell us a little bit about the experience of all them? Because it's quite unusual that you get to go to so many.
Yeah. So far, I've never been able to tell this whole story without getting emotional. So I'm not sure if
That's
tonight
fine.
would be an exception.
Yeah.
But so 2000 came around and we had the selection trials in Florida, and the last 2 days before the last competition, my horse had a colic surgery. So 2000 was out. Then, but I still was able to travel to Sydney to support the team a little bit. I was working with Christine Traurick at that time, and that was my first wonderful introduction to Australia, and I loved it ever since then. I mean, I just really, really enjoy your country. Then 2004 came around, and I was riding a horse named Floriano, and on the final trials, he won. First day he was fourth, and the second day he was fifth. So he ended up being the alternate. So, but I did get to travel to Athens.
Yes.
And of course, I was happy for my teammates winning a bronze medal. But you also knew it was very close of making the team again.
Yes.
You know, so now there's 2 Olympic Games between Atlanta.
Yes.
2008 comes around, and we had Ravel was a young upcoming horse, and he ended up being fourth in the Grand Prix Special, but third in the freestyle. But in those days, the Grand Prix and the freestyle were combined. So overall, I ended up fourth. So that was really close of missing a medal again. So now we have 3 Olympics. So now 2012 comes around. In London, we didn't have the best go, but again, it was very special to make the team. So then 2016 comes around, and we just have the most amazing team, not just quality-wise from the riders, but the friendship and the camaraderie was so perfect. And we trained together in Holland for 2 months. We went to each competition. Anytime if there was something negative in the press, we really stuck together. And this really was the first time I was on a dream team. And I think that really made a huge difference then when we went to Rio.
Yes.
And I still remember we were sitting, with our equine therapist and other team members were all sitting together. And when Laura Graves was finishing her test, that bronze medal came with every single step a little closer, So now you have to understand that's 20 years between the first medal and then getting a chance there again and missing it so many times by just a very small margin, So of course my teammates were super excited, but they saw me sitting there crying like a little boy. And it just meant so much to me, that this team and with these incredible horses that they fought for us. And like I said, with Laura's ride, every single step, this medal was getting closer. And I guarantee you, we were more excited about the bronze medal than the Germans about the gold medal. I can guarantee you that.
And was this on Ravel that you were riding there?
No, Ravel was retired after the Olympic Games in London.
Yes.
And then I was riding Legolas in Rio. And Legolas was already with us as an alternate for London.
Yeah.
But just a little too soon for him. And he really matured in Rio, and he had his best performance of his entire career right there in Rio. And it just meant so much. Yes, the freestyle was good, but the team medal, it just means so much to me, and just really delivering for 3 exceptional human beings, who became your family during that time. It just meant so much, And then I thought that was going to be really, really hard to top. And then when we got the silver medal in Tokyo, that was, again, undescribable.
Yes.
Same situation. I was sitting there with Adrian watching Sabine in her test. And again, with every single step, we thought the bronze medal was getting closer. And I knew we had the bronze medal, and I had to go to the bathroom really bad. And when I came back, I saw Charlotte Dujardin's test, and she had a small mistake. And that was the difference between the bronze medal and the silver medal.
Wow.
And again, for us to have to do this with 3 exceptional horses, and I always said in Tokyo, the reality was better than the dreams.
Wow.
It was so special. So lots of wonderful experiences.
Tell me, when you are actually on the horse and you are riding your horse around the arena and you're about to go in to do your test, if we go back to your very first one in Atlanta when you were very young, what do you feel riding around there, about to go in on your horse? What's the communication between you and your horse, if you take yourself back to those moments?
Yeah, I think that is a very, very important question, an important point. I always believed in early on what I learned from so many wonderful trainers that I worked with is that you train each and every day. You don't do necessarily every single movement, but if you do a movement, you do it at the quality that is required at the Olympic Games. But also very important to know that I don't do more or expect more when I go into the show arena now. When I really want to rely at that time on the training that we did at the highest standards, and now we ride every single movement that way. I didn't go in and say, this is the Olympic Games, this is it, we got to turn it up a little bit, we got to do more. Yeah. No, we were just training, competing exactly at the same level that we trained at. And I remember making that mistake once before, where I became with Ravel closer and closer to Isabel's and Anki's performance. And we had one global dressage championship in Florida, and I said, this is it. Now, Anki and Isabel have been ahead marginally, and this is it. Today, I'm going to be ahead. And it wasn't my best test. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't my best test. And I came out of the ring, and Anki told me, he said, Steffen, you wrote the scoreboard. You didn't ride your horse. And those words always stuck with me. And since then, I beat Anki and Isabel in Aachen that same year. And I went up to Anki. I said, Anki, this is your fault. You told me how to ride my horse and what to expect in the arena. And we laughed about it, of course.
Yes.
But the bottom line, to answer your question, we go exactly back to that confident training that we've done before, and not a little bit more. And if there's more, I think that's just part of the Olympic spirit. Nobody goes into the Olympic arena and says, today we're going to do less.
Yes.
So, but it really came down to this really consistent training. And there again, I have to thank so many people, Debbie McDonald, Klaus Balkenhol, Johan Hinnemann, and Christine Traurig. There's been so many that have been guiding me on a really good path.
So with all these different horses you've had for the different Olympic Games, is there one horse that stands out in your heart that you really connected with more than the others?
It's such a hard question, because they, when they go in there and they fight for you and they win medals for you, I think that's an incredible achievement if you do that just yourself as an Olympic athlete. But now you do it together with an animal, with a horse that, like I said, that fights for you to win medals.
Yes.
That is such an incredible feeling, and of course it meant the world to me that Udong made it from 3 years old to 18 years old, got a medal. He was also a fighter. Ravel was also a very close friend. Like I was very close to him, but he did not enjoy other people or a lot of noise in the stall. He would always pin his ears back when there was too much going on. But I could sit with him in a stall, and he accepted that.
Yeah.
And then Legolas was more of a playful horse. I could, he was like a golden retriever. He would have a toy in his stall, and he would play with it, and then I would have to say Mopsy was the most sensitive horse out of all of them.
Okay.
Very, very in tuned, and he would also enjoy if I would just sit in his stall and we would just hang out together. To give you an example, I would always take his bridle off when I get done riding, and he would walk over to my four-wheeler, my ATV. He knew he had a box of cookies in there, and he could open the lid and just take a few cookies, and then he would never be too pushy about it and take too many. He knew after a few seconds he would turn back to me. I put the halter on and we walked back. But if you ask me about that one particular horse, that is really, really hard to say. I love them from the bottom of my heart. I really do.
Yeah.
And when Mopsy became the rave horse in Tokyo, that of course was very special. It is really hard to pinpoint one horse and say this is the one.
Yeah.
I was so fortunate to have so many wonderful horses.
Do you find that when you look then back on each horse, that each horse taught you something that the others didn't? So it's like they gave you little treasures. Each of them gave you a little treasure. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Udong, I had to, at his age, at 18, I had to motivate him a little bit more. And then in the test, he was, of course, 100% with me and very honest.
Yes.
I think that was the first lesson to say, whatever movement we think about in the arena, this desire to move forward and this sensitive reaction to the leg always needs to be there.
Yes.
And Ravel taught me early on that he would give me 98% of that what he's capable of. Mm-hmm. If I push for those extra 2%,
yes,
like I mentioned before,
yes,
like what Anki told me, that situation in Florida, it would backfire. And I could feel him not being really in his comfort zone. So I accepted that. The 98% was good for an 86% in a freestyle, and that was good enough. Legolas was extremely difficult in flying changes. And there were, doing the 110 piece, it was like rolling the dice. And he did those perfectly in Rio. And what I learned from him, you can encourage a horse or you can motivate a horse in most other movements. But if they lack a little confidence in flying changes, that is never the place for any type of correction. That is just a place to repeat and even say, you know what, that is not happening today and tomorrow is another day.
Yeah.
That's what I learned from him,
Yes.
And then with Mopsy, it was so interesting. I really mean this. Every single test I had to tell him to do a little bit less. He would go in there and he would be so energetic. And I always had a hard time controlling the trot extensions because he wanted to go so much. Same in the canter extensions. And honestly, this horse was so smart. I would guide him into a canter pirouette. And honestly, I wouldn't do anything afterwards. I would only tell him when to get out of the pirouette. But he was so committed and so talented for those movements.
Yes.
It was amazing. And same for the piaffe and passage. Sometimes I had to tell him to do a little bit less. And even less ended up being a little bit more.
Well, he sounds like a nice one.
So, you're absolutely right. When you talk about teaching, I had so many wonderful human teachers, but the horses were my professors. There's no doubt.
Yes. So now, another really interesting thing to talk about is being the competition rider and the challenge that you often can find yourself in now that you have to go in and perform. And sometimes what happens, I think, is a challenge for many competition riders is that the inner state is not always as balanced and centered as we may like, and that then can affect the performance at hand. So over the years with all your competition, how have you sort of mastered that yourself from, you explained like at the first Olympic, how you were so nervous even weeks beforehand, and then, the day comes, and then, you have all the other Olympics. So looking back over all that, how have you worked your way through it? And can you sort of also maybe talk about how sometimes life has been in the way and you have had to enter where you're not always feeling in this balanced, beautiful state, but nevertheless you have to ride down the center line, and then how that affected the performance, and then other time when everything just lines up and you feel centered, ready and focused, and then how that unfolds. Maybe, I don't know, talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I was always very open about mental health and, my own challenges dealing here and there with some anxiety. Mm-hmm. That never was a problem since I started competing when I was 10 years old.
Yes.
It was never an issue until I want to say 2018 when Mopsy became on the scene. He was my first finished Grand Prix horse. Mm-hmm. And Helen Langenhagenberg had done already some very nice Grand Prix with him. And I felt a lot of pressure to deliver at least that. And, but in those days, even a 74-75% was not enough. Mm-hmm. So, I felt this tremendous pressure. And at the World Games in Tryon, I didn't have a good Grand Prix. And I remember talking to Akiko, my wonderful sponsor for 20 years, said, Akiko, I'm not sure if I'm good enough to ride this horse. Mm-hmm. And she goes, right now, enjoy the silver medal and, you'll figure it out. And she was right. I talked to her after Tokyo when we got the silver medal. I said, Akiko, I think when I told you in 2018 that I wasn't good enough, I think I was wrong. So in a positive way that it did work out.
Yes.
But again, there were moments, 2018 to about 2020, 21, dealing with anxiety. Thank God, no panic attacks. But I could tell I would not... I couldn't settle down after a test. Usually you have this adrenaline pumping and then, half an hour later, everything settles down. But the braking mechanism in my nervous system was not functioning very well. Mm-hmm. And I could feel this now a little bit more in between competitions. And honestly, what I have to say is the more I try to control anxiety, the more it tried to control me. Mm-hmm. And when I learned to accept this and simply say, listen, you've done this, I don't know how many hundreds of times, hundreds of Grand Prix, And even when you get super nervous, like before the Olympic Games in Atlanta, and any other test, it had never affected your decision making or your riding.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's a study: when you're too laid back, if it doesn't work; when you're overly excited, it doesn't work either. But there's a happy medium right in the middle,
Yes.
where an excited stage is productive. And
Yes.
But unfortunately, in those days, I wasn't sleeping very well, and again, that pressure of delivering, with such an amazing horse like Mopsy, he wasn't necessarily an inexpensive horse, and there was just a lot of pressure that
Yes.
I didn't deal with very well. And when you ask me how did you master it, I don't
Yes.
think I really mastered it. I just learned to deal with it and accepted it. And I said, look, maybe that last hour before you get on the horse, your heart rate is at 120. And you know what? That's just part of it. It's just the way it is. And that's the time when I invested a lot of time into meditation.
Yes.
And I have to admit, it took me 2 years. I'm not kidding, Pernille. It took me 2 years, especially in the evening, to shut this thing down.
Yes.
It is so natural. For millions of years, we've learned to just keep on thinking and analyzing and overthinking, and to reduce that inner voice, this chatter, that took forever. But I'm enjoying it nowadays so much, becoming very calm. I believe in all kinds of interesting treatments. Like I have a cold plunge outside.
Oh, yes.
And it's at 10 degrees Celsius, at about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And first thing in the morning, I go in there. And your first reaction is to hyperventilate because of the cold water.
Yes.
But you do exactly the opposite. Try to become very calm. And I have to say, breathing was always recommended. It didn't really work for me.
Okay.
So just meditating. And I read this wonderful book, and I read it literally 4 times, and it's called The Untethered Soul.
Yes,
And
I know it.
Isn't it wonderful?
Oh, it's so good. About the voice in your head.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
And the author says, if imagine this voice in your head would be a person, and this person is talking to you 12 hours a day, sometimes 24 hours a day, you would tell them to take a hike and go somewhere else, and that really, really stuck with me. And since that day of dealing with some anxiety, I watch my thoughts very carefully, and I catch it now. I said, hey, this was completely unproductive, this thought.
Yes.
And we can all think very positively. That's wonderful, but it takes so much more to think about the preparation of a test. I think when I look back at the win in Las Vegas in 2009 at the World Cup, I knew exactly what that arena would feel like. I knew what the temperature was like. I know what the electricity would be like. I even knew what it smells like. And then I put, beside the focus, I put such an amazing emotion into that test. I pictured already, what would that feel like if you hold the trophy up? What would you tell the press if you do really well? So it wasn't just positive thinking. There was a really, really strong positive emotion that went into that. And honestly, that's what I was able to recreate for many competitions after that.
Yes, you've really felt your way into the experience before you even had the experience.
Exactly.
Yes.
I studied so many wonderful books, how the brain works and how networks work together and how they fire together. And I get it. I really get it. And again, that helped me tremendously getting over the anxiety and, really, 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 really started to enjoy competition.
Yes. I think what you're saying, that makes perfect sense, because it sort of allows one to understand oneself, like why you react a certain way. So what you're saying is you read books, you've done so much study, so you've gained so much understanding really of yourself. So when you have those experiences, you know what you're dealing with more than when you're younger. Yes. It's not, it's difficult to understand.
Yeah, exactly. And, one thing I also had to learn when there was a test that wasn't very good, and thank God I can count them on one hand in the last 20 years, that I didn't have good tests at international competition, but the ability to let go.
Yeah.
I give myself, of course I'm semi-retired or retired from competition now, but I gave myself literally in the last few years an hour when things didn't go well. I said, that's it. You have an hour and then we're done with it.
Yeah.
And it sounds challenging, but it works.
Yeah.
And before it was days and nights and not sleeping. And, the only one, even when I felt sometimes the judges' scores weren't quite there, or one judge was a little lower, it only hurt myself if I think so much about that one judge's score and dwell on it for a day or two. It is so extremely damaging to human, not just the mind, the body suffers. When you think negatively, your entire body starts reacting to it.
Yes.
And again, I really get it.
Yes. It is that mind-body connection, isn't it? The mind is thinking and the body's feeling, and then you get on the horse and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And therefore, Pernille, if I could just give one little advice to anyone, it is so important to know in the training where the confidence comes from. How rideable is my horse and how ready is my horse for this competition, and really setting ourselves up for a realistic competition, a realistic goal, and then bringing this confidence and this enthusiasm, this positiveness to a horse show. It shouldn't be that we get in there and do a testing, get lucky.
No.
We just
yes.
And that's really what I'm telling my students all day long, in every single session, that we simply should allow our horses to tell us when they're ready for the next level. It is wonderful to have those goals and ride the Grand Prix next year, but it needs to be so fair to the horse, but also to yourself, to the rider. You put yourself in a position where that goal is actually doable. It's achievable.
Yeah. So with all your, not your competition riding, but with your training of all your students, what are some of the biggest challenges you see for them riding?
So many always told me when they watch my tests, and I'm not trying to brag here, they said, there's so many tests, we couldn't really see what you're doing. And I think that's a wonderful compliment. And that's what I'm trying to bring across, that we really need to understand how effective, how sensitively a horse needs to listen to the aids, and sometimes we get amazingly complicated questions, Pernille, but it always comes down to the acceptance of the aids. If you really analyze the reaction to the leg, the seat, and the rein aid, then we're in good shape. And yes, we go through movements with our students, but I constantly ask the rider, now go down the long side, don't do anything special, and ask yourself, is this the feeling you want to take into the show arena? How is the self-carriage? How is the suppleness, the straightness? How much do I really have to do to achieve that rideability? And when people say, yeah, I got to go back to the basics, those are the basics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that question is so important to me, where the rider always gives me the feedback and says, yeah, this feels like I could compete with next week. And when that feeling is not there, to me, it doesn't matter so much what the movement looks like, but when that effortless feeling is not there, the movement doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know if, I can get the movement here and there, but the question is it reliable enough for the show arena?
Yes.
And when we look at movements, there's so many times when I teach clinics or lessons at home where the movement doesn't even have to get better, but it has to become more reliable, that you can get this in the show arena every single time, and therefore I always come back to this idea of invisible aids and understanding that it is possible to ride a PF just with the pressure from the calf. And if that's not enough, of course, we can encourage a horse momentarily to make them sensitive. But it's not the spur that maintains a PF. It's not the spur that maintains a gait or any other movement. It always comes down back to the calf aid. That's the simplicity. That's the essence of the sport, that our horses are so with us in perfect cooperation. I don't like the word submission at all.
No.
But I like that cooperation,
Connection. You want to be completely connected with your horse.
There you go.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
exactly.
That's it. And when you and explain to me then, or tell me when you feel that with I was watching a couple of your tests in preparation for today when you were riding Ravel in Aachen, when you did did they call it the Triple Crown? Like you won all 3 tests?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the connection you had with him there, that looked like that felt good. Yeah, would you?
Yeah. He was in such a good place, and let's go a moment back to 2008 at the Olympic Games in Hong Kong. There was a lot of discrepancy about Ravel's placing. Some thought he should have been at least second, but that was a political decision and we completely left that alone. We did not ever speak up. Other people spoke up. They said they stole the medal from Steffen and we never talked about it. So then he wins the World Cup, and now several people told me, he said, don't go to Aachen. That's Germany. You can never win there. He said, I'm fine with that. Let me just have that challenge,
Yes.
And that's how I trained with that idea. I said, yeah, that's going to be very challenging against the Germans. But even in the Grand Prix, he started already so perfectly. I still remember that I did exactly 21 minutes of warm-up, not a second more. That's all he needed. He was calm. He was just at the right temperature, not too hot, not too cold. He did a flawless test. Same in the Grand Prix Special.
Yeah.
And then Ravel was the first horse that actually did in a freestyle a double canter pirouette to a PF. That was the very first time that was done. And they rewarded the freestyle with an 86%. And that was a tremendous feeling,
Yes.
And I had my mom was there. Akiko's family was there. My sister was there. Actually, my coach who trained me the first time when I rode ponies, a Dutch trainer, he was there, so it meant
That's
so
a good
much.
moment.
It was an incredible feeling.
Yes.
Yeah. It really meant the world. And then you Of course, afterwards you are allowed to go into the main stadium, the jumping stadium in front of 64,000 people. You get to talk briefly about your test. And, those are incredible memories. And, we are allowed to experience that with our animals, the connection with the horse. It just means the world. This wasn't just me. This was at least 80% the horse,
Yes.
and I've always felt so much gratitude, especially the days after when it sinks in and you're just grazing with your horse, you're reflecting a little bit. And, the pride that you feel that they went in there and they fought for you just at the right moment. What an incredible feeling. Try to put that in words. It's
You can't,
very difficult.
yes. I know. Horses are the best. They really are.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's for sure. You've been riding your whole life, and horses have just been this steady companion, hasn't it? Mm-hmm. So when you look ahead, you will just keep riding, I assume.
Well, since last year I dealt with quite a bit of neuropathy in my feet and my hands. And when I ride less, it gets better. The cold plunge helps. The meditation helps. I think it's still a bit of a residual from anxiety.
Yes.
It's much better. I'm sleeping and I know exactly what to do to calm myself down. Mm-hmm. But I also know when I get on a horse, my body switches to competition mode.
Okay.
And even if I walk a horse around the property, I can feel that, So I think I have to take care of my health.
Yes.
Because it's not just affecting my mental health, it's affecting my body. And I have to be realistic there. As amazing as it would be to ride in Los Angeles, last year I was sure that I'm 99% retired. Today, I'm 99.9% retired. So there's still that little percent where you say, what if you get that special horse?
Yes.
What if?
What if?
But I have to be realistic. And when I look back at 6 Olympic Games, 6 World Cups, 5 World Equestrian Games, there's, it's
amazing.
It's a wonderful memory. The neat thing is, me as a writer, you remember that more. Other people might have forgotten that already, but I still can relive that, especially when I see sometimes a day that's maybe not as good. I can switch immediately to memories like Tokyo.
Yes.
And that for a little while, that was impossible. And what I don't like to mention very much, but I have to admit that there was a time in 2019, 2020, where things got so bad. I watched the freestyle in Las Vegas, and I didn't believe it was me. It got that bad. And then I think that was rock bottom right there. And that's when the Untethered Soul came into play, and so many other wonderful therapies that don't include medication necessarily. Yes. So I know what rock bottom is, and I also know what extreme enthusiasm, excitement, and I know what winning at a major international competition, what that feels like.
Yeah, you've experienced the contrast,
yes.
the whole scale.
The whole scale.
The whole scale.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you find then, because you just mentioned that when you now get on the horse and the pressure of the competition, do you think it is that, in fact, that competition can put so much pressure on, competition riders, that it does have, that effect where if you could take that away, and it was more, the pressure wasn't there, do you think you would enjoy it differently?
Yeah, I think so. If I would have learned meditation earlier and everything that involves relaxation or calming, understanding the nervous system, understanding all the factors that affect the nervous system,
Yes.
and just been having a better education, even as a kid already. We were 12 years old and we were chasing a spot on pony teams. In Europe, you have competitions in Denmark, in Sweden, in Belgium, in Holland, France. You have international European championships. And you feel the pressure there and you deal with it. But I think at that time, having a better education and a better understanding what actually goes on in your nervous system,
Yes,
just understanding it, even if you don't know exactly what to do about it, but really understanding the nervous system, I think it would have made a huge difference. Yes. And you're right, the pressure would have been different.
yes. It is that the out of experience of riding the competition, isn't it? But it's that inner experience of the rider that's actually doing it. It's two different things, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is for sure, And yes, there are disappointments, but really enjoying the success as a team.
Yes.
That meant the world to me. I don't get me wrong. I love the win in Las Vegas, the win in Aachen. But if you give me a choice between that and winning the medals in Atlanta, in Rio, and especially in Tokyo,
Yeah.
I take the team medals anytime at the Pan American Games, delivering for a good group of people and an amazing number of horses. That meant the world to me.
Yes. Yes. Sharing that whole experience with all your teammates and the connection you have together. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So looking back over, now we look back over your riding career, what are some of those really big life lessons you feel you have learned from your horses that you can really take with you moving forward?
Number one, I think very important when you prepare for an Olympic game, let's say, and there's not every day is brilliant. There are some days where mistakes happen. And I think allowing those mistakes to have the same value or the same importance as it did 3-4 months ago when the Olympic Games were not breathing down your neck. So what I'm saying is accepting that mistake in the flying change just as you did 3 months ago, just because the Olympics are now tomorrow, the day after, that mistake in the flying change needs to have the same importance or unimportance as it did some time ago. And really showing that you have that control and say, yeah, okay, that wasn't good. And now it's not going to bother me more than it did 3 or 4 months ago. And, building this confidence and also this perfect training situation that meant a lot. And that's sometimes challenging. I'm not telling anybody anything new. When you in an arena before the Olympic Games, you usually are paired up with another rider. That's not necessarily always a team member. That's maybe a rider from a different nation. And there's been multiple times that for some reason I've been paired up with Isabel to go in there. And when Isabel goes in there, there is the other rules going left to left, but sometimes those rules don't apply to Isabel. And she gets very, very determined in there, and she gets very irritated if you don't give her the space.
Yeah.
Even those situations, really saying, yep, you know what, this is quite annoying. And the stewards are not saying much. Even at that time saying, you know what, this is a little challenging here. I observe that situation, don't judge it.
Yeah.
So many lessons to learn at that time,
Yes.
and then later on, getting done in the training session, and then talking briefly to Isabel, and just many times she apologized, and just that was it. Then you're done with it. That situation doesn't linger on. This whole idea of letting go, letting it go, so extremely important.
Yeah.
Not just in the writing situation, to anything in life, betrayal or but whatever it is, we have to be able to let go. We even have to be able to let go of something that is so extremely dear to us, that means so much to us. Of course, it wasn't easy when we retired Mopsy after Paris, but even that, you really have to learn to let go.
Yeah.
And Mopsy is now at a wonderful facility up in Northern California. I can visit him anytime, but those moments are not easy.
No. But you've learned to harvest all the good moments and bring them with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Well, this is such a good conversation, Steffen. So
yeah, there's so much to learn. It's just amazing.
There just is, isn't it? Horses really they are great teachers, aren't they? They teach us a lot. But do you find that they do teach us a lot about ourselves?
Yeah, for sure. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Keeping that composure all the time, and that's something I think I learned early on when I was in my 20s, when, yes, okay, there was an Olympic game already, but, I did so many clinics over the years. It wasn't just the work at home, and always having, a pretty good crowd of, 100, 200 people watching, and then knowing, even if you ride a very strange horse, things are not going to go perfect, but finding composed ways to work through things. And, it might be a moment frustrating, but that's it. You move on and you find and you explain positive ways to work through those issues.
Yes.
Even if I have to say, hey, this flying chain is not going to happen today. Let's try tomorrow again.
Yeah.
Or if a horse did 3-4 amazing PF steps, to be okay with that and say, it's very tempting to be greedy here and get more.
Yeah.
But showing as a youngster in front of a bunch of people that composure, that had to be there.
Yes.
And I think that I was able to eventually incorporate more and more into the warm-up. So, I have to thank a lot of American dressage fans who attended my clinic and helped me to keep that composure.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Well, if you could whisper a message into every equestrian's hearts, what would that message be?
The message would be that I mentioned before, when we focus on success, or when we focus on the next national championships or regional championships, or just the next show, not just going through the test. We have to know what it feels like, how a horse reacts, and we should be in front of that arena that we're competing in, not just practicing the test somewhere in the barn area. We should go up to the arena and going through the test, knowing what that feels like, even having the vision from up on top looking at the horse. And then, like what I said before, really allowing yourself to bring that emotion into the test. I mean, I honestly had, like I said before, I had a feeling what that would feel like to hold that trophy in Las Vegas in front of those 8,000 people. You know, I imagined that. And yeah, you have to believe in winning,
Yes.
you know, or you have to believe in a very successful outcome, you know, and therefore, again, it really comes back to this very realistic and fair training each and every day, that we can take that into the warm-up, and that we can take the same horse from the warm-up to the show arena. So many horses change when they go into the show arena, you know, but with that high expectation in the training, you know, physically and mentally, I think that would be my message. And, you know, dream big, you know, see what that gold medal feels like. I remember when this silver medal in Tokyo, I had to hold it with one hand. It was so heavy. It was bouncing in my face, you know. I imagine how heavy that medal will feel, you know, and don't just imagine the test. Imagine it with a ton of positive emotion. And if you're in a quiet moment and you happen to cry about it because it felt so good, that's okay. And I know, I really believe this. There were many, many times when I imagined that test, my brain did not know if I was standing on the ground or I was actually competing in that arena. I was in such a zone, my brain did not know the difference. I was there in that zone.
Wow. Well, let's finish on such a good note, shall we?
Yeah, sounds good. But, you know, and I still have this, you know, even when I'm allowed to do clinics, you know, unfortunately I don't do so well with time changes, traveling internationally, but I get such a kick out of working with people who want to learn. I still have here and there lessons where younger people try to get their ponies on the bit. I don't mind that at all. You know, the fact that they might get something out of this clinic where they say, okay, this is what I can build on, you know, and getting a little bit this feedback, or having a student, you know, a young rider, U25 rider who does well, you know, that success, I can feel that, you know, just what I mentioned before, you know, those emotions, those positive emotions that I mentioned, they come back, and I find it just as rewarding when a student does well. I get a kick out of that.
That's so good. That's so good. Now, is there somewhere, if people want to get in contact with you for training or clinics or anything like that, is there have you got a website, or how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, there's two ways. Our farm is called Arroyo del Mar. ARROYO Del Mar. And if you Google that brings you to our farm. But personally, very easy. My first and last name, Steffen, is spelled with 2 F, STEFFEN. Peters at Michael Echo ME.com.
Perfect. Oh, that's so good. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. I hope you really enjoyed it and found lots of wisdom and inspiration to take with you. Until next time, ride the way you want to live.